On a daily basis, we are subjected to events that have the power to change the world as we know it. Never before has the very existence and harmony of the world been challenged to such as it is today. Today, we take a stand to not remain as mute spectators. Today, we pledge to protect our present and future. Today, we are INCONTRO MUN 2017.
Good morning to one and all. I, Priya Madhvati, and my co-host Akshay Tayal welcomes Ambassador Prakash Rao, Emeritus Director Pathfinder International, Dr. Asmita Chitnis, Director Symbiosis Institute of International Business, Dr. Prakash Rao, Deputy Director Symbiosis Institute of International Business, faculty members, delegates, and my fellow students to INCONTRO MUN 2017.
Initiated in 2013, INCONTRO MUN, which stimulates actual United Nations, has made a name for itself as a battleground of brilliant minds working in tandem to pass effective resolutions to combat issues that plague humanity as a whole. It is the perfect platform to showcase one's debating and persuasive skills and act as a delegate of different nations to arrive at a unanimous resolution.
As it has been the Symbiosis tradition, we start every occasion with the lighting of the lamp. We invite Ambassador Prakash Rao, Dr. Asmita Chitnis, Dr. Prakash Rao, and Dr. Sandeep Solanki. Now, we request Dr. Asmita Chitnis to felicitate our Honorable Chief Guest, Ambassador Shah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. We now invite Dr. Asmita Chitnis, Director SIIB, to address the delegates.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome all of you to INCONTRO MUN 2017. We have conducted a number of events in this academic year, and I think this is something different. The reason being, all the events that we have conducted so far, you were organizers and you were attendees. But I think this time you are not only organizers, but you are also participants. This is a different activity in the sense it gives you a lot of opportunities to enhance your skill set. Most importantly, it develops your confidence and leadership skill. It gives you opportunity to connect with people, so it's a networking opportunity. And when you become the delegate for this particular event, it forces you to look at different geographical regions and study them. Because otherwise we won't even look at the map, isn't it? When we decide to represent something, then only we actually start working on it. And as a student of International Business School, I feel it is very important for all of us to understand how business happens internationally, how two countries deal with each other, what are the problems faced by different regions, and how do we resolve them through negotiations. So there's a negotiation skill which is very important, which is important skill and that you can definitely enhance through participating in such type of activities. It's an extensive and 2-day event, so I'm sure there are going to be a lot of takeaways from it, a lot of learning. Today we have with us Ambassador Prakash Shah. He is a renowned Indian diplomat. We are very fortunate to have you, sir, here because he has been the representative of India in United Nations from 1995 to 97. Am I right, sir? Yeah. So he has worked extensively around the world and he has got a lot of experience of working in United Nations. So we have got a very good chief guest today. And there will be a lot of learning when he speaks. There are a lot of interesting things that we will come to know. So we are looking forward to your speech, sir. So once again, welcome. and wish you all the best for these 2 days event. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I would like to call upon stage Anurag Dubey, Director General of INCONTRO MUN 2017.
A very good morning, everyone. Let me start by welcoming tomorrow's leaders to today's INCONTRO MUN 2017. Seeing all of you here is a timely reminder of the spirit of the UN which exists to serve succeeding generations. It is the 4th edition of INCONTRO MUN and the 3rd edition in collaboration with United Nations Information Center for India and Bhutan. I am heartened to see such a large and enthusiastic group of fellow students engaged in global issues. Today, we shall together represent United Nations as it should be, people from various backgrounds coming together to find solutions to problems through constructive debate, negotiation, and an exchange of ideas. This year, INCONTRO MUN has 4 committees, namely General Assembly, Security Council, Economic and Social Council, and United Nations Human Rights Council. The agenda for these committees seeks to address some of the most pertinent and challenging issues faced by humanity today. The agendas include deliberations on issues like the soaring tensions in the Korean Peninsula, the rising walls of free trade and protectionist policies, climate change and sustainable development, and barring refugee entry. Is it a nation's right, or is it a violation of human rights? Ever since inception, INCONTRO MUN is built on open minds and fresh ideas. Dear delegates, many of you have been asked to represent national agendas or stands that you may personally disagree with, but still you will represent it and do it so fairly as well as forcefully. Thus, this open-mindedness is the essence of successful diplomacy, the ability to understand and analyze all positions, including those which we oppose. The acceptance of differing point of views clearly distinguishes our conference, and I believe it will prove crucial as we assume leadership roles in the 21st century. Dear delegates, I hope that this conference provides you an opportunity to negotiate with other delegates, form networks, and come out with a workable resolution in all the committees. I thank you all for your commitment and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Anurag. It gives us immense pleasure to have amongst us in this August gathering Ambassador Prakash Rao, chief guest for today's event. Sir was the special envoy of the UN Secretary General for Iraq and was India's permanent representative to the United Nations in the New York City, where, among other duties, he served as India's chief negotiator on Security Council reforms and at the UN Disarmament Conference.
With 3.5 decades as an Indian diplomat, he has wide experience in political, economic, and petroleum issues. He also served as Vice Chairman of UN working groups on strengthening the UN system and as Indian representative of the United Nations Population Fund. He earlier served as India's ambassador to Japan, Venezuela, and Malaysia, and also as permanent representative to the UN in Geneva. He currently serves as Emeritus Director of Pathfinder International. Mr. Shah is also a member of Board of International Advisors of Sloan Global Consultant, Washington, D.C., UPS Corporate Division, Washington, D.C., and Dotsal Group, United Arab Emirates. As an independent consultant, he serves on a number of boards, including Khanwala Securities Bombay, Symbiosis International Education Society, and Indo-American Arts Council.
Sir, we are honored with your presence. Symbiosis family welcomes you. Now, we request Sir to kindly address the delegates.
Thank you for this introduction, and apologies for coming late, but as we were discussing before coming here, we are all used to the idea that over the years we have a certain set procedure for doing things, but we don't take into account that the world changes, the acts of God change, and one of the issues that you might be probably dealing with here is the issue which both inside and outside the United Nations people are struggling with, and which affected, in my view, something that happened today, which is the global climate change. So we may decide that it is extremely good every September at 9 o'clock in the morning on a particular day to have a conference, but God and nature might have a different interpretation of the whole thing. And I think one of the issues that you would be studying, and which I think you should take into account in the future, is that the world is dynamic. It is not ruled only by people who make changes, but it's also ruled by a lot of acts of nature, starting from climate to wars to situations that are beyond the control of human beings. And therefore we have to be a little more concessional to things that change in a manner that is different from the way in which we are expecting to conduct itself. Anyway, I believe that you are on a course to study international business. International business in the years that we have seen over the last few decades has changed in a dramatic way. Today, first of all, globalization is one of the more important things. We have reached the pinnacle of globalization about a couple of years ago, and there have been those who are pro-globalization, those who are against. But as an economy and as a group of people who are studying international business, you would have to face globalization in many ways, even though in recent electoral changes in many of the major countries such as USA, UK, Europe, etc., there has been, leaders have been elected who do not believe that globalization is a good thing to go forward to. But these are, as I said, these are dynamic changes that will take place over a period of time. A new person would be elected 4 years from now in USA, and he may have a different views on this. But you will be facing all these issues as you go out in the world at the end of your course here, where international relations will be an effective part of international business. There is no getting away from that fact. And the fact that you are being exposed to international relations under the UN auspices is I think, an extremely good part of your course or your training, because of the fact that when you go forward, there are those who are in favor of the United Nations, there are those who are against. UN has done some very good work. UN has been unable to do work on other important issues. But how the UN functions, how do you participate in it, what is negotiations, what is dialogue, in what way do we deal with international relations, international business relations, international economic relations, disarmament, human rights. All this will be part of what you will be doing in terms of business. Business doesn't mean now that you can only have to deal with business people. What is happening in India is an example. The government, whatever projects the government deals with in terms of raising the standard of living of India or the GDP rate of India, is both a matter for the governments as well as for the private sector as well as for the society. And these people all have to work together in order to be able to do that. So that is what you will be doing. That, I presume, is part of the reason why we are discussing the United Nations today. I heard the previous speaker mention that many of you would be representing countries or viewpoints with which you may or may not personally agree. But that is not the training that you are getting here. What you are getting here is that if you are representing, let us say, Pakistan, which is in many ways a problem country for all of us, and whether you agree with the policies or not, you are really representing Pakistan, however wrong their policies may be. So I'm sure that that would be a part of your training on how to learn how to appreciate the other person's point of view. Because unless and until you begin to appreciate the other person's point of view, it's very difficult for you to succeed in negotiations. I can sit down and negotiate in the non-aligned conference or at the United Nations or at the Human Rights Council or at the disarmament. But if I don't know what others who are objecting to what I'm saying think about it, why do they think about it, what is the reason why they think about it, what is their national interest, it's very difficult for me to come up with a solution that might, that they might also agree with. Because the overall purpose of dealing with the United Nations or world affairs is to try and achieve a solution that would be best for most people in the world, not just for your own country. If you look at the UN Charter, for instance, in the UN Charter, what has been written in the UN Charter? Why is the UN established? It's established for the good of the people. It is not there for the good of the countries. It is there for the good of the people. Because when the UN Charter was promulgated sometime after the Second World War, there were only 50 plus countries, members of the United Nations. Over the period of time from 1946 to today, I think we have just observed the 70th anniversary of the United Nations. The membership has gone up from 50 odd to 195, which means that a very large number of countries which were not independent at the time when the Charter was formed have become independent in various ways, under various conditions, from various colonial powers. Many of them are still learning how to run governments in their own countries, how to govern in terms of tolerance, in terms of interreligious conflict, in terms of interparochial, interstate conflicts, in terms of communities, in terms of different states that we are dealing with. Some are matured economies because they have been independent for many years, some have become independent now. And United Nations becomes a place where, at least in the General Assembly, it's perhaps the only organization in the world where, regardless of the size of your population, of the geographical area, of the money you spend, etc., every country has one vote in the UN General Assembly. Many problems which all of us face, which are beyond your territorial borders. And these are we have started dealing with it on the basis of what is called the thematic issues. Terrorism, for example, it knows no borders, and therefore the entire international community under the United Nations and other organizations try to come together, because the threat of terrorism affects almost every country. It is not a bilateral issue between X country and Y country. It's an international issue. The spread of diseases in various parts of the world is another international issue. The global climate. If rainfall in some parts of the world increase by a certain amount of time, a certain amount of volumes, and there is a ½ inch or 1 inch increase in the waves or sea levels, there are several countries which are island countries which just disappear. And therefore it is an issue that is of importance to all the rest of us. We may be a big country, and we may be affected by the global climate change in terms of temperatures and rainfall and tsunami, etc. But we will still continue because we are a big country. Lots of small countries, lots of island countries, their entire existence is threatened by changes in the global climate. Because do not forget that the international community always gets together in terms of crisis that is not the making on their own. Today, the influence of countries like Britain and France is so much less in the world than it used to be in 1946. The influence of some of the other countries who have contributed greatly to the functioning and the progress of the United Nations and the purposes and the objectives of the United Nations, whether financially or in terms of peacekeeping or in terms of intellectual benefits or in terms of humanitarian, anti-terrorist, etc. work. Shouldn't they be part of the permanent membership of the Security Council and to widen the effort? Why is it that 5 permanent members from Europe, USA and Asia should look after and decide on a conflict in Africa or in Latin America, none of which has a membership, permanent membership in the Security Council? What do they know of these countries? Would they be solving these problems with their national interests in mind, or are they really solving the problems with the interests of the neighbors or of the continent in which the conflict takes place? So there are a whole lot of issues that the UN faces. We were told 2 days ago that the new President of the United States, speaking at the UN forum, will lay down certain provisions for its reforms. Unfortunately, I don't see very much in his speech which deals with the question of reforms. But reforms question is handled by all of us together. There are committees, there are individuals, there are countries who constantly put forward possibilities, solutions, etc. to these problems. Some succeed, some do not succeed, but it's an ongoing affair. And therefore, to know about what is happening in what is United Nations, what is happening in the United Nations, what is it that they can do, is an important part of life of all of us, particularly of all of you who would be the future policymakers both of India and in the world and in the business world. So it is necessary that you come to know about it, contribute towards it. And before I close, and I will take answers because it's such a wide subject, questions because such a wide subject, it is better for me to speak on issues that bother you rather than on issues that bother me. So I will stop. But before that, I also want to point out that all of us look at the United Nations. There is a general feeling that United Nations is what happens in the Security Council and General Assembly. But that is not true. United Nations has a huge number of organizations which deal with everything. They deal with, there is the World Health Organization, there is the financial organizations which are the IMF and World Bank, there is the UN Fund for Population Activities, there is UNESCO for Cultural and Social Organization, there is High Commissioner for Refugees, there is how to deal with IT or how to deal with the communications. Many of these do work, which is very useful. We adopted, there is the International Civil Aviation Organization, there is the Organization of Human Settlements. So these do a lot of good work. So my appeal to you is that when you look at the United Nations, just don't look at whether politically or internationally, economically it achieves anything. But in many of the sectoral issues, they have achieved a tremendous amount of work. And many of the countries like ours work through those organizations to change issues which affect the rest of the world, but which are not so much in the public domain. For example, as you heard, I was also India's representative in the Disarmament Committee. Disarmament Committee deals with all disarmament issues. The two major ones of which are, of course, the nuclear weapons and the whole issue of disarmament. Now, we work a lot on that. We have already, I was there when we negotiated the Chemical Weapons Convention, and we started the discussions on Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. And we now have discussions going on the question of how to control fissionable material, since on an overall basis we are nowhere near the elimination of nuclear weapons from this world, and more countries, as witnessed from North Korea's example over the last few weeks or months, are taking on nuclear weapons, which is a danger to the world. But there are areas where you could work on it, you could delay what is happening, you could try and find pressure on people who are doing that. And in the process, we continue to apply pressure on the original 5 nuclear weapon powers, saying, if you are going to keep nuclear weapons, your credibility will improve, asking the rest of us not to have nuclear weapons, if you actually agree and move towards a world without nuclear weapons. You cannot turn around and say that I can have as many nuclear weapons as I like, but you cannot have any. Because it's going to be difficult to try and persuade other people, unless you do it yourself. So these are issues which continue, and that is why I'm saying that instead of merely judging the United Nations performance from Security Council or the General Assembly, there are a whole lot of UN organizations which do a lot of good work. And if you are planning to have, let's say, training or internment or even go forward ultimately to international diplomacy, don't think only in terms of the UN in New York. There are a whole lot of other organizations which organization do a great lot of work, and you might be a specialist in one of those verticals. So it would be good to focus on many of those organizations as well as the United Nations in New York. Today, what you are doing in the conference is that you have taken up 4 major UN organizations or functions: the Security Council, General Assembly, Human Rights Council, and ECOSOC, is it? But there are a whole lot of others which you can take up next time. But if you focus on these, it would cover a whole lot of issues. So I would end by saying that the UN, which started off with the idea of threats to international security and threats to each other, or attack by one country or another, and solution to that problem, has grown tremendously to cover a lot of social, economic, thematic and other issues, which have also become very important from the humanities point of view. And taking them forward would be as much a contribution to the world as taking the Security Council reforms forward. Thank you very much for listening to me.